Thanks so much for tuning in to Talking Point. I'm your host, Neeraj Shah. On a day like this, wherein the equity markets have corrected a little bit, not too much, about a third percent and a third. So just around circa 15,000 or 14,900 for the Nifty, and thereabouts for the Sensex around 50 or 1,000. But the fear might be palpable because of what's happening in the world markets. It's very important to get a sane, long-term, experienced equity voice to talk about how is he believing the near term could shape up, if you will. And Harsha Upadhyay will try and do precisely that for us today. He, of course, invests for the really long term for his set of investors in the large AMC that he runs. But we would ask him to also try and dabble upon the tactical side of the market a little bit. He joins in today. Harsha, really good having you. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope all is safe.
Yes, Neeraj. Good morning.
Yeah. So Harsha, the biggest talking point today undoubtedly is the yields, right? And the US side. So let's just first talk about that. There was this chart on the terminal which showed how the US yield, the bond yields have now eclipsed the S&P 500 dividend yields as well. And that might in some fashion exacerbate the flows out of stocks into bonds, because investors will now realize that they have some alternatives as opposed to the TINA factor that played out for equities, wherein there was no alternative but equities. How would you read into this uptick in yields and what it could do to the risk appetite for equities globally and then in India?
Neeraj, clearly the risk appetite will go down a bit, but I don't think there will be a complete shift away from equities in favor of other asset classes. Yes, the current yields are higher than dividend yield that's there in the US market. So from a psychological perspective, that also coincides with roughly 1.5% yield. That's where when it crossed last night, there was a bit of a nervousness, and that has rubbed off effect on, has affected other markets as well, including India. But I would say that given that economic recovery is still patchy, I do not believe that inflation is going to really go up sustainably higher from current levels. So to that extent, any worry on immediate increase in interest rates, whether in India or globally, is not looking a possible scenario. So to that extent, I would say that while there will be nervousness in the market, especially given that the valuations are on the higher side, and you have also seen significantly strong performance over the last couple of quarters across equity markets. There will be bouts of volatility, but we still believe that equity markets have more legs to going forward.
Okay. And we'll get to the India piece in just a bit, but Harsha, just one more quick global opinion. So one of the beliefs is that because of the valuations and the levels at which the global markets are currently, the room for error is small, and any shift in the sand could bring about a larger than anticipated reaction, if you will. Sure, it could be a correction in the ongoing market, but the correction could be large. So my question is, one, what's the probability that you assign to something like this? And in light of that probability, can there be a larger reaction in Indian markets too if the world markets were to fall, despite all the efforts that the government is putting out? We'll get to India specifically, but just the broad market construct, if you will, currently.
See, whenever you have a strong performance in the previous few quarters, and that also coincides with higher valuation, definitely there are going to be bouts of volatility even on small risks or expected risks. So to that extent, nobody can rule out further volatility in the markets. What one needs to be cautious about is over the last few quarters, not so much in India, but globally, we have seen all kinds of stocks moving up based on some sort of a fancy towards those businesses. They may not be really the ones which have strong business models, strong cash flows, and ability to sustain some of these cyclical issues. So to that extent, those are the pockets where you could see higher volatility if at all the equity markets continue to correct from these levels. So our approach for our Indian equities would be to look for companies which have a sustainable earnings growth visible, And in our case, thankfully, because of the lower base effect that is in March 2020 and June 2020 due to COVID crisis, we are most likely to have strong earnings growth continuing at least for a couple of quarters. And I see lesser risk in that sense for earnings momentum in India.
Great. There's one more aspect that I think a Jeffries note today lays out, Harsha, that global yields may do what they do. Indian yields also will have collateral moves, maybe. But in the past 4 or 5 instances that they have cited in this chart, they say that Indian markets have actually done well in 3 of those instances. 5 times in the last 15 years that we've seen a sharp rise. And 3 of those instances, the markets have actually done reasonably okay. So would it be a fallacy to believe that even if the yields were to move up in India, markets will necessarily correct?
One can't say that, because when yields are moving up initially, I don't think there will be such a big risk that will be there on the equity markets, because we expect growth also to improve at that point of time. So what will be in focus would be most likely the earnings growth. Only when you start anticipating some softness in earnings growth and yields are also looking higher, that's when I think a bigger risk will come in terms of stock market reaction.
Okay, and then I think I heard you say that earnings growth, at least for the next couple of quarters, if not longer, seems to be strong. So that's not a worry. Okay, and we'll get to that also. But just a couple of other global factors, Harsha, and one of them is what is fueling this whole upsurge in yields as well, right? The belief that inflation might be there in commodities to an extent, a large part, because there has been a tremendous commodity price inflation across the board. We're seeing this happening not just in oil. How do you gauge this? Would you attribute this entirely to supply side disruptions, and therefore would you believe that once these supplies normalize, then the prices of some of these commodities, if not all, could correct meaningfully? What are your thoughts on this whole commodity universe?
I would say that partly it's because of sentiments where the people are expecting economies to revive going forward, and partly because of the supply constraints that we are seeing across commodity complex. Now, as far as supply is concerned, I think over a period of time, this would settle down, and you will start seeing a reasonably strong production coming back. That should also coincide somewhat with some increased demand because post-winter, most likely that global economy also will have some improvement in terms of overall economic growth. So I would say that as long as demand supply in that period is going to be well matched, we will not really see further increase in commodity prices. But in case, even when 2 quarters down the line, for example, supply issues continue to dominate, then I believe commodities can really sustain high levels. And that could be a negative for inflation.
Would the same hold true for oil, because it's just got so much of a correlation to sentiment on Indian equities as well? Again, Texas and some of the supply issues playing part, and would it come back? What are your? I mean, I'm just asking, how are you at Kotak gauging this move on oil and the impact that it can have on sentiment as well as on the macro factors for India?
As far as crude is concerned, we believe that it's going to be in a range, maybe with a slightly upward bias. So we expect that it should trade somewhere between $60 to $70 per barrel at this point of time. And the most comforting factor for India, as compared to earlier years, is that our currency has remained quite stable, given the kind of portfolio flows that we are seeing. And the kind of strength we have on the external side, including forex reserves and our current account balance, etc. We are fairly okay on the currency side. So even if crude were to move up from current levels, I don't think you will have a cascading effect in terms of depreciation of rupee and that further adding into inflation. So at this point of time, as long as it stays in this band, I think economy as well as some of the manufacturers who use crude derivatives as raw material or as fuel, etc., will still have a reasonable pricing power and reasonable strength overall. But if it were to break this band and move higher, then I think some of the players will be forced to increase prices, and that could play a spoil sport both in terms of sentiments as well as further support to inflation.
Okay, interesting. So let's try and now gauge what could happen to India. And I think, Harsha, the factor is that after a fairly robust 2020, 2021 has not been bad either. We just ended the February series. And if we just look at the YTD performances, I mean, I think we gained some 11% in the Feb series itself. But YTD, everything from autos to PSU banks to metals to economy linked spaces like ports and others, and this chart shows that wonderfully, have done really well. Um, how would your portfolio construct be currently, considering that there has been a bit of a change in the composition of the top gainers over a quarter or so to say?
Most of our portfolios are tilted towards cyclical recovery. We have already seen some evidence of that in the September quarter and the December quarter. While the top line growth is still somewhat muted, we have already seen higher profitability, mainly coming through cost optimization as well as deleveraging effect. Across the board, we have seen these two trends, and we believe that that's likely to continue even going forward. And as I said earlier in my remarks, you have a lower base in March 2020 and June 2020. So to that extent, and given that there is a sequential improvement as well that's happening in the economy, you're going to see really good earnings numbers on a year-on-year basis in March 21 as well as June 21. And even for financial year 22, there is a reasonable chance that we will reach those estimates, what the consensus is expecting. So given all this and the fact that if you look at December results, for example, almost all of the sectors have participated in terms of earnings growth, barring a very few pockets like media, some parts of infra, etc. I think almost all of the sectors have participated in terms of earnings growth, and that gives confidence that this economic recovery is gaining momentum. And also, the announcements in the budget have been supportive to growth, which means that some of the segments which were not seeing any growth, let's say due to weak investment cycle and lack of credit growth, industrials, private sector banks, some of the construction related sectors or home building, home improvement related sectors, all of this are likely to see strength going forward. So our belief is while valuations are high, as long as you are betting on pockets where on a relative basis valuations are still lower and where there is room for further re-rating. And I would say that cement, industrials, private sector banks, these are the pockets where if the momentum continues, there can be further re-rating. So that's where we are tilting our portfolios towards. We do have some weights in defensives such as IT, FMCG, pharma, etc. But none of these segments are overweight in our portfolio. We have taken more stock-specific bets there depending on our comfort on expected earnings growth and valuation.
Interesting. Harsha, can I probe on one particular theme, if you will, and that is the home improvement side, right? So when one looks at the whole real estate and home improvement piece, everything from paints to certain leading ceramic, sanitary ware players to structural steel players, etc. All of those are not looking terribly cheap. Sure, the growth may be there, but they're not looking cheap, and there are headwinds of oil for paint companies, for example. So never mind what Asian Paints speaks about the growth numbers, there could be some pressures due to margins, etc. So how does one navigate through this? Because it is an exciting growth pocket, but in some of those the valuations are not strong. So therefore, is cement therefore the antidote to that? How do you what is your mental model when you look at this entire piece?
See, first of all, we have not seen an upcycle in real estate. I would say sustainable upcycle for almost like a decade or more. So to that extent, I think some of these pockets had not done well, and whatever past growth rates you see may not necessarily give you an indication in terms of what is likely to happen if the growth pickup happens. For example, real estate alone drives demand for more than 250 odd subsegments of the economy. It's a very, very large sector which drives demand for various segments, including cement, home building materials such as paints, ceramic tiles, pipes, and so on. So to that extent, any pickup in real estate, which we are already witnessing across the board in the last 1 or 2 quarters, if that sustains, I think that can augur really well for some of these home building or home improvement segments. We are preferring to play that mainly through cement because we are also seeing the rest of the demand for cement sector also improving. For example, 2/3 of cement sector demand comes from housing sector and 1/3 comes from infrastructure. And we are seeing improvement in infrastructure going forward as well. So we prefer to play that particular theme. When you look at other home building and home improvement segments, such as ceramics, paints, and so on, yes, there are some pockets, especially paints, where valuations are much higher than historical levels and much higher than relative to the market as well. But there are many other segments where things can improve even further from these levels if real estate growth and home improvement overall growth improves. So we are playing some of those themes. Unfortunately, most of these segments are constituted by mid caps and small cap stocks, and you really do not have large cap stocks apart from cement sector, for example. So while we are bullish on home improvement and home building, it's difficult to put all of those stocks in a single portfolio, given liquidity and investment mandates and so on. So what we are trying to do now is cement has been an universal overweight across our portfolios. And whereas other home building and home improvement segments are concerned, we are picking one or two of those particular themes in each and every portfolio and try to make an exposure to overall theme. So that's what we have been trying to do in the recent times.
Okay, Harsha, we also seen evidence of how exports across the Asian region have picked up. Now, India may not be at the forefront of this, but I mean, seemingly a lot of the Indian exports are from sectors which are defensive in nature, right? IT, pharma, so to say. So my question to you is, how are your portfolios tilted towards companies which will benefit out of the domestic theme? Or could some of the exporters also do well because of PLI, because of the China Plus One strategy? Because that seems to be the talk of the last 6 months, right? The whole China Plus One strategy, every specialty chemical company is embarking on an expansion spree, and they must be doing this capex spree because they're seeing some growth, not just from India, but from abroad as well, right? Similarly for pharma, I think the second PLI was approved yesterday. So, and every tech company says that the order books are burgeoning. So how do you look at the export oriented pieces when the domestics themselves are looking so strong?
You're right. The China Plus One strategy is really gaining momentum. We have seen, especially in the specialty chemical sector, capital expenditures happening at a regular interval, and also those production capacities are being utilized already. So there is significant demand that's coming, and on the back of that, companies are further increasing their capacities. I think the building blocks for some of these sectors to really become larger players, to become larger players in the overall global trade is already in place. I think some of the issues earlier were surrounding the taxation issue. I think in September 2019, government has clearly brought down taxation for corporates and also for new manufacturing capacities. They followed it up through PLI schemes covering 13 odd sectors. So I think all of these incentives and the roadmap that has been given is clearly to focus on getting higher share of global exports in many sectors. I would say that some of the sectors are already ahead of the pack, such as specialty chemicals is already ahead of the pack, and it's getting quite a bit of momentum there. And we could also see many more such pockets getting incentives through PLI schemes and also attempting to get a higher share of overall business. I would say that contract manufacturing is definitely one of those such areas. And we are also expecting some of the upsides to come in pharma, auto, ag, etc. going forward.
So, Harsha, my final question, and that is on precisely that point, that when I look at, for example, specialty chemicals, right? All the larger names, I mean, the Aartis, SRFs, Deepaks, etc. All of them are now trading at much higher valuations than they have had, right? 20 to 35 times. Similarly, the only two names worth their salt in contract manufacturing, both Dixon and Amber, are trading at stratospheric valuations. So, what do you do in this scenario? I mean, would you go out and still buy them because they are growth? I'm not asking you to name specific names. I'm just asking about the broad theme. Would you go out and buy them because the growth prospects may still look good, or would you wait for, say, tactically better entry points?
See, thankfully, we have overweight position on some of these sectors and subsegments in our portfolio. So we are not so much worried about taking a fresh position. But as far as we are concerned, if we were to take fresh positions, then it would be more on buy on dip kind of a situation. We believe that as long as earnings growth is continuing, some of these valuations may hold for the medium term. Yes, in the short term, there can be volatility around these valuations, but overall, they will sustain those valuations. But if for some reason the expectations get delayed or don't come through, then there is a significant risk in all of these names because, as you rightly mentioned, the valuations are on the higher side. So to that extent, I think just chasing the momentum may not help in all of these subsegments. One has to wait for the right opportunity and then build a portfolio or increase the rotation.
Okay, Asha, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us today. It was lovely having you, and stay safe.
Thank you, Neeraj. Stay safe.
Yeah. And viewers, thanks for tuning into this edition of The Talking Point.